The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
Have you ever felt a strange pull towards the unknown, a sense that reality is more fluid than we perceive? Today, we're diving into the enigmatic life and perplexing disappearance of Dr. Jacobo Greenberg, a Mexican scientist who dedicated his life to exploring the fringes of consciousness. From studying the intricate workings of the brain to delving into the world of shamanic healing and telepathy, Greenberg wasn't afraid to blend science with the seemingly impossible. You provided us with a fascinating collection of sources about Greenberg's life and work, and I'm eager to unravel this mystery with you.
Greenberg's story is particularly captivating because he wasn't some isolated figure dabbling in the esoteric. He held a PhD in neuroscience and headed a laboratory at the National University of Mexico, a testament to his scientific credentials.
It's almost like he was living a double life, the respected academic and the explorer of the paranormal.
Exactly. And this duality is where things get interesting. One of the most compelling aspects of Greenberg's work is his time spent studying Pachita, a Mexican healer who claimed to perform psychic surgery.
Okay, psychic surgery. We have to talk about this. For our listener, Pachita was renowned for allegedly performing surgeries with her bare hands, often using unconventional tools like kitchen knives. She claimed to channel a spirit entity who guided her work, and people traveled from all over to seek her healing.
Now, while many viewed Pachita as a fraud, and skepticism is certainly warranted, Greenberg approached her with a scientist's eye. He meticulously documented over 50 of her surgeries, trying to understand the mechanisms at play.
It sounds like he was trying to find a scientific explanation for something that defied conventional understanding.
Precisely. This experience seemed to have a profound impact on Greenberg's thinking, leading him to develop his syntactic theory, a bold attempt to reconcile the material world with the realm of consciousness.
Okay, let's unpack the syntactic theory a bit. In essence, Greenberg proposed that reality, as we experience it, isn't an objective, external thing, but rather a construct created by our minds.
Imagine our minds as projectors, casting out a field of experience that we then perceive as the physical world. This field, according to Greenberg, is shaped by our perceptions, beliefs, and even cultural conditioning.
So instead of passively observing a pre-existing reality, our minds actively participate in shaping it. It's like we're all co-creators of our own perceived world.
That's the crux of Greenberg's theory. He argued that our interactions with the world, from the way we perceive objects to the relationships we form, are mediated through this neural field generated by the brain.
This sounds like it has huge implications for how we understand everything from perception to interpersonal connections. What did the scientific community at the time make of this?
As you can imagine, Greenberg's syntactic theory was met with a mixture of intrigue and skepticism. While some saw it as a radical but potentially groundbreaking concept, others viewed it as too speculative, lacking the empirical evidence they demanded.
It must have been a lonely position for Greenberg, trying to bridge these two worlds, the rigorous world of academia and the often dismissed realm of consciousness exploration.
You're right. He was walking a tightrope, and it's this tension that makes his story so compelling. Here was a man trying to expand the boundaries of science while also honoring the mysteries that science couldn't yet fully grasp.
It's like he was challenging the very foundation of how we understand reality, like what is real?
And perhaps that's what ultimately led him to explore one of the most perplexing phenomena of all, telepathy.
Right, the idea that thoughts and feelings could be transmitted directly from one mind to another without any sensory input. So how did Greenberg go from studying, psychic surgery to attempting to scientifically prove telepathy?
Well, if we consider his syntactic theory, it posits that our minds are not isolated entities, but rather interconnected nodes within a larger field of consciousness. Telepathy in this context could be seen as a heightened sensitivity to this interconnectedness.
So instead of something supernatural, Greenberg saw telepathy as a natural extension of how our brains already operate.
Exactly. He conducted numerous experiments throughout the 1970s and 80s, attempting to measure and quantify telepathic communication under controlled conditions.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. He used a tool called an electroencephalogram, or EEG, to measure the electrical activity in the brains of his subjects. For our listener, an EEG essentially detects brain waves through sensors placed on the scalp, providing a visual representation of brain activity.
Greenberg would often work with pairs who had a strong emotional bond, like mothers and children or close friends, and he'd place them in separate shielded rooms and ask one person to send a thought or image to the other while monitoring their brainwaves.
And what did he find? Was there any evidence that these thoughts were actually being transmitted?
In a number of these experiments, Greenberg observed intriguing correlations between the brainwave patterns of the sender and the receiver, even though they were physically isolated.
That's incredible. It seems like he was really onto something. So how did these early experiments lead him to that ambitious satellite project we mentioned earlier?
Greenberg wanted to take his research to the next level, to see if telepathic connections could be established across vast distances, and this led him to develop an experiment that would utilize satellite technology to link minds across continents, a truly groundbreaking idea for the early 1990s.
Okay, so he's on the verge of potentially proving telepathy exists on a global scale. And then he attends this mysterious conference in Costa Rica. What do we know about this conference and the people who attended?
Unfortunately, details are scarce. We know that this wasn't simply an academic gathering. Attendees included not only scientists and researchers exploring consciousness, but also individuals with alleged ties to intelligence agencies.
Intelligence agencies, that's a whole other layer of intrigue.
Indeed, it's been speculated that Greenberg's research, particularly his work on telepathy, may have attracted the attention of organizations like the CIA, who were deeply interested in psychic phenomena during the Cold War.
It's like something out of a spy thriller. Did they see Greenberg's work as a potential tool for espionage or even warfare?
It's certainly possible. Projects like Stargate, a real CIA program that ran for decades, investigated the potential of using psychic abilities for intelligence gathering. While the program's efficacy is debated, it highlights the very real interest in psychic phenomena within intelligence circles.
So Greenberg is at this conference, potentially rubbing shoulders with spies and scientists interested in the weaponization of consciousness. What happened next?
According to accounts, Greenberg returned from Costa Rica visibly changed. He became increasingly withdrawn and expressed anxieties about his safety and the implications of his work.
It's as if something at that conference, or perhaps something he learned, deeply disturbed him. Did he share his concerns with anyone specifically?
There are anecdotal reports that he confided in close friends and colleagues, but nothing concrete has ever been confirmed. The specifics of what transpired at that conference and in the days that followed remain shrouded in mystery.
This is where the story takes an even stranger turn. Just weeks after returning from this conference, Greenberg seemingly vanished without a trace. So we have this brilliant scientist on the cusp of potentially revolutionary research, suddenly expressing deep concern after a mysterious conference. And then he disappears. It's December of 1994. What were the circumstances surrounding his vanishing?
It's as bewildering as it sounds. December 8th, 1994 is the date most sources point to. Greenberg was scheduled to depart for India just days later for his much-anticipated telepathy experiment using satellite technology. Everything seemed to be in place, yet he was nowhere to be found.
Just gone. No warning signs, no indication of where he might have gone.
Precisely. No calls, no messages. His credit cards went unused. His disappearance was reported to authorities, but the investigation, as you can imagine, was met with dead ends.
I can only imagine the anguish his family and friends must have felt. And to make matters even more perplexing, his wife, Teresa Mendoza, disappeared as well.
Yes. Her disappearance occurred sometime after Greenberg's, though the exact timeline is unclear. This detail further fueled the conspiracy theories surrounding his case.
It's like something out of a fictional thriller, but this was real life. What were some of the theories circulating about Greenberg's disappearance?
Given the circumstances, speculation ran wild. Some believe that Greenberg's research, perhaps even something he might have learned at that conference in Costa Rica, attracted unwanted attention, possibly from powerful entities seeking to control or suppress such knowledge.
So, a forced disappearance. Silenced because his work was deemed too dangerous.
It's a chilling possibility. There's also the theory that his wife, Teresa, who some believe had ties to intelligence agencies, was somehow involved.
Adding another layer of intrigue to an already enigmatic case. Were there any other theories that attempted to explain his vanishing?
Some have suggested that Greenberg's disappearance was a voluntary act, perhaps even orchestrated by the scientist himself.
You mean a deliberate disappearance, but why?
It's been suggested that he may have reached a critical point in his research, a breakthrough so profound that it required him to step away from his life, perhaps even seeking refuge in a remote location to continue his work in secret.
So he might have gone into hiding, driven by a discovery so significant it warranted disappearing from the public eye. It's a fascinating, albeit speculative, possibility.
There's even a theory proposing that Greenberg might have stumbled upon a method for transcending ordinary reality, something hinted at in ancient mystical traditions and perhaps unlocked through his research.
It's like he walked through a doorway into the unknown, leaving behind the constraints of our perceived world. It's a compelling thought, but without concrete evidence, it remains firmly in the realm of speculation. Decades later, the mystery of Jacobo Greenberg's disappearance remains unsolved. Despite numerous investigations, books, and documentaries dedicated to unraveling the truth, his fate continues to captivate and intrigue.
What we're left with is a legacy of groundbreaking research, unanswered questions, and a profound sense of wonder. Jacobo Greenberg dared to venture beyond the accepted boundaries of science, exploring the uncharted territories of consciousness.
His story serves as a powerful reminder that there are still vast realms of knowledge yet to be explored, mysteries that continue to beckon us from the edges of our understanding. What if, as Greenberg believed, the power to shape reality lies dormant within us, waiting to be awakened? Perhaps one day the answers to the mysteries surrounding his life and disappearance will surface. Until then, we can delve into his work, explore the questions he posed, and continue to ponder the infinite possibilities that lie at the intersection of science and consciousness.